let's talk to Conservative councillor for Epping and Thaden, Holly Whitbread, who's here. I mean, too little too late from the Health Secretary, who's meant to meet them on Friday and didn't bother. I mean, no wonder they're upset.
Well, I mean, it's a disappointing situation, and when you look at the demand of 35%, clearly that's just way too high. The Health Secretary does need to engage in discussions on this important issue, and he is making offers to do so, but it is disappointing we're in this situation.
He shouldn't be making offers to do so. He should just be doing it.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a lot of conversations going on behind the scene. There's always like a bit of theatre to all of this, so I'm sure there have been ongoing conversations.
I mean, there is a little bit of confusion around those figures. Some of the papers are putting the pay rise of what they'd like at 26%, so I think there is a little bit of confusion there. But as we just heard in that introduction there, I mean, this is going to have an unprecedented impact on the NHS, isn't it? An NHS that is already on its knees.
Yeah, and I think it should be said that actually the junior doctors don't sit within that independent pay review process as well. So that's an important point to make. But it is going to have a profound effect on the NHS, and it's unfortunate that we keep seeing all of these strikes and walkouts, and there is a bit of a moral question. We shouldn't be seeing NHS resources so depleted on the ground, so there's a real moral question around that as well.
Yeah, I mean, well, there is, but this has to be addressed by the government, and I think the problem is it feels like the government isn't engaging on this, on such a serious issue, because it's not just about meeting the demands or addressing the demands of those junior doctors now. If this isn't addressed, this is going to have an impact on recruitment as well. I mean, this is actually a long-term issue to think about.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and looking at kind of the NHS workforce is a real challenge that this government has. I think it's unfair to say that the government aren't engaging, and I know there's a lot of kind of talks going on at all stages, but when you see kind of these huge above inflation requests in terms of pay, obviously it is just unrealistic, and that is the real issue here. I think there's got to be a wider and broader conversation about the NHS and reform and staff pay, but this is not the way to go about it.
What do you make of Steve Barclay's comments in The Telegraph this morning? He's been speaking directly to junior doctors, saying to check your conscience before you go on strike. What do you make of those kind of comments? Do you think that's fair, or do you think that's emotional blackmail?
I think it is fair. And obviously there's been conversations around kind of minimum service agreement, and I don't think it's right, particularly around the kind of A&E strikes, for us to see these strikes from junior doctors. I come from a family of NHS workers. Actually, most of my aunties are nurses, and there is always that moral question about whether it's right to go on strike, because primarily, despite the kind of conflicts you might have over pay, your number one job is to support people.
Yeah, but the problem is, Will, and the fact that this is all unprecedented now in this situation that we're in, is that people feel their backs are against it. Well, they don't want to strike. I mean, you talk to nurses, you talk to junior doctors and all that. They don't want to strike. They want to be serving their patients. But they just feel like they have no other option now. And that's the problem here. Whether you agree with striking or not, they feel like how else do they get heard? And
I think it's right we do listen to the concerns, and the government need to engage with the unions on this, because actually we saw the NHS support us more than ever before during the pandemic. But personally, and I know many people feel like this, that walkouts and strikes are just not the way to take that action. The government have seen kind of extra levels of support where they with the nurses in particular, where other public sector parts haven't seen that. So I think the government have provided support, but as I said, it needs to be a wider conversation.
We're hearing this morning that the unions have rejected those last-minute talks offered by Health Secretary Steve Barclay. They did want to speak on Friday, but according to them, Steve Barclay did not show up. Do you think we could see the government relent on this issue? They won't want to see 72 hours worth of strikes from junior doctors, or do you think we are going to see the strike go ahead this week now?
I don't think you're going to see the pay increases that are being demanded, so whether it's 35 or 26, I can't see that happening. So unfortunately, it may be the case, but I hope that in the next couple of days, the next few hours, the government can continue conversations.